After 20 years of betrayal, he walks away only to discover an amazing change that inspires. Jim Parker stood in the dim light of his empty factory, aware that everything he had worked for was about to come crumbling down. The clang of metal echoed through the silence, a cruel reminder of his sacrifices, a lifetime spent toiling in this small Midwestern town for a family who no longer wanted him. He had given up his dreams for Sarah, his wife of 20 years. But the hard truth clung to him like the sweat on his brow. She'd betrayed him with his business partner, a man he considered a brother. Just days before, he'd found their messages, each one sharper than a blade, slicing through 2 decades of trust. Heart racing, he drove aimlessly through Blue River, the town that had once felt like home. In his mind, he replayed memories of 4th of July parades, cozy potlucks, and rakings of leaves piled high in the fall. Everything felt perfumed with the scent of fresh pies from the local diner, but now each smell was tainted by bitterness. Finally, he pulled into his father's rundown neighborhood, the place he'd sworn he'd never return to. The old wooden door creaked as he stepped inside, greeted by peeling walls that mirrored his shattered heart. Loneliness enveloped him, each breath a weight on his chest. But within that darkness, a flicker of hope lingered. He grabbed the dusty box of tools hidden away in the attic. It was the legacy of his grandfather, a carpenter who had taught him that every piece of wood had potential. He spent hours whittling away, the chisel biting into reclaimed wood as if it had feelings of its own. Each strike became an exhale, a release from the constraints of betrayal that tightened around him. The shards of wood transformed under his hands into beautiful furniture, a coffee table here, a rocking chair there. They were pieces that remembered history while embracing a future. "Wow, Jim, these are amazing!" a neighbor exclaimed as he unveiled his first collection in the community center. Families stood in awe, their admiration washing over him like a refreshing tide. He felt the warmth of rekindled connections, laughter resonating in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope ignited within him, and he embraced the community, growing into something stronger, something more resilient. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each success, Jim dared to imagine a better life. But just as he started to believe in this newfound purpose, a shocking opportunity landed in his lap, an initiative to confront the economic injustices strangling Blue River. Yet, the pain of betrayal lingered, wrapped tight around his heart. Would he be able to forgive Sarah and his partner, or let their actions dictate his journey? As Jim stood at the crossroads of past hurts and present possibilities, the air crackled with anticipation. Would he seize this chance for justice, or would the scars of betrayal haunt him forever? The answer remained just out of reach in the shadows of his past, and the next chapter of his life awaited, teetering on the edge. Jim took a deep breath as he stood in front of the community center, his heart racing. The initiative to improve Blue River felt like a lifeline, a chance to create something meaningful out of the ashes of his broken life. But how could he step into the spotlight when the specter of betrayal loomed so closely? He thought about Sarah and Marcus, their faces godlike reminders of his pain. "Jim, are you ready?" asked Lisa, a fellow organizer, snapping him back to the present. Her enthusiasm was infectious, her eyes radiating a warmth that briefly eased his turmoil. "The town is counting on you. We need voices like yours." This was it. This was his moment to wrestle against that pain, to channel it into something good. He nodded, swallowing the bitterness that threatened to rise again. "Yeah, let us do this." The meeting room buzzed with voices as he stepped up to the front. A small crowd had gathered, their hopeful expressions meeting his. He opened his mouth to speak, but for a moment, anxiety clenched his chest. What would they think of him? What if they knew what Sarah had done? But then he remembered the feeling of the wood beneath his hands, the soothing rhythm of the chisel. Hey everyone, he began, his voice slightly shaky. I know firsthand what it feels like to be knocked down. Many of us have our battles. A broken heart does not define us. The room fell silent. He could feel the weight of their gazes. Encouraged, he continued, pouring out his vision for change, for hope, and for a better Blue River. Each word was a step toward healing, both for himself and the community. He could see their faces shift from curiosity to inspiration, a wave of shared energy rippling through the room. When the meeting ended, applause erupted, and he stepped down, pulse racing, a smile breaking across his face. Lisa came over, beaming. That was incredible. People are ready to jump in. You've got this. Feeling a glow of warmth, Jim couldn't help but think of the progress he had made in just a short time. But that joy was interrupted as Sarah walked into the room. Her eyes found his, the sea of congratulations fading into palpable tension. Jim, she called, her voice shaky against the applause still echoing behind her. He felt a tightness in his chest again, the confusion, the anger, the memories swirling like a storm. What do you want? He asked, forcing the words out even as the hurt tightened around his throat. I came to talk, she said softly. Can we find a moment alone? Hesitation gripped him. This was the last thing he wanted, but didn't this moment of vulnerability call for honesty? Could they even see eye to eye anymore? He glanced around at the hopeful faces, the vibrant possibilities surrounding him. Should this past intrude on the future he was trying to build? He hesitated, torn between the kindness he once shared with Sarah and the bitterness that colored every memory. As he wrestled with the choice, an unexpected clarity washed over him. Sure, he finally replied, steeling his spine as he led her to a quieter corner. The air felt heavy with unsaid words and unhealed wounds. But let us make it quick. His heart raced as the question hung between them: could this conversation bring closure or just open old scars? As Sarah began to speak, he braced himself for the truth that could change everything once again. As they settled into a small nook of the community center, the laughter and chatter of the crowd faded into the background, leaving an uneasy silence hanging in the air. Jim faced Sarah, her eyes searching his face for something he couldn't quite identify. The way her brow furrowed made him want to soften, but the memories of betrayal held him firm. I've missed you, she started hesitantly, her voice tremoring slightly. I thought maybe after all this time, we could talk. I didn't want to defend myself, I just wanted. She took a deep breath, blinking rapidly. I wanted to explain. Jim clenched his jaw, refusing to let her words worm their way into his heart. Explain what? Why you chose him? Why the secret texts and soft lies? What is left to explain? His voice was sharper than he intended. I was scared, Jim. She took a half step closer, her hands trembling at her sides. It was never supposed to happen like that. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could manage everything, and then it spiraled. Every word drew closer to his wounds. You were scared of what? Losing the life you had? Or losing me? Yes, both. I didn't know how to cope with all of it. Losing you felt unbearable. It was right after your dad passed, everything just turned upside down. His heart twisted at the mention of his father. A part of him still ached from that loss, the one moment when he needed comfort, not betrayal. He had buried so many memories of that time, trying to move forward while dragging the weight of turmoil behind him. And so you turned to Marcus? I know it was a mistake. A terrible, horrific mistake, she admitted, tears beginning to shine in her eyes. I was trying to find solace. I wasn't thinking straight. Anger and sorrow battled inside him, rising up like a tide threatening to crash over. So you used my weakness to find your strength? He shook his head. That doesn't sound like a mistake. It sounds like a choice. A tear slipped down her cheek. She was visibly shaken, but Jim felt that familiar wall start to build. Forgiveness felt 1,000 miles away. Jim. I came back here because I realized it wasn't just losing you that hurt. Her voice cracked. It was losing myself. I spent so long grieving you and the life we could have had together. The air between them seemed to shift, and for a fraction of a moment, Jim believed her. But doubt coiled tightly around his heart. How can I trust you now? Trust is built, Not given, she replied, her voice steadying. I want to work for it, if you'll let me show you that I'm not the same person I was before. His heart raced. Could he entertain this? Could he open a door that had been bolted shut? Was it even wise to consider? Just then, a voice from the crowd called out, Jim. We could use your help with the plans. The reverie of their moment shattered, and he nearly turned back toward the group, retreating from the confrontation. He shifted uncomfortably, anger and confusion battling within him. He started, but halted. Could he even answer that call for help? There was so much to untangle. Jim, please, Sarah pleaded, her eyes wide, tender. Give me a chance. As he looked into her eyes, he felt the delicate threads of possibility twisting around them, like vines attempting to intertwine. Could there be a future? Or was it just another tangled web? Maybe, he whispered, the flicker of hope in her voice igniting a small spark in his chest, leaving them teetering on the edge of something profoundly delicate. What came next hung like a promise in the air, but he wasn't ready to make those choices just yet. He turned back toward the room, the noise clamoring back into focus. I need to think. I can't just dive into old waters. Well, I'll be here, she said softly, sadness lining her features, yet determination blazed in her eyes. As he stepped away from her, Jim couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was stirring. Would he find closure or another reason to stay buried in the past? The question lingered as he walked back to the eager faces awaiting him. Would the ghost of old love haunt him, or was this an opening into a new chapter? Jim navigated through the crowd, the murmurs of excitement filling his ears. He forced a smile, but inside, a storm raged. Each step felt heavy, burdened with the weight of his past. Sarah's words echoed in his head, twisting like a knife with every thought. Jim, we could use your insight on decorating the main hall. A woman called out, her energy infectious. He nodded mechanically, trying to join in, but his mind was elsewhere. Sarah was here. After all those years, she was back. Facing him, pleading for a chance. He tried to focus on the task at hand, arranging tables and setting up banners, but his hands felt numb. The laughter around him faded into the background, like a distant melody that he couldn't grasp. He could still see her tear-streaked face, the anguish etched in her features. Every ounce of hurt bubbled up, and he pushed it down fiercely. A few moments later, he caught a glimpse of Sarah again, standing by the refreshment table, deep in conversation with another friend. It stung to see her smile now, that same smile he had once cherished. The pang of nostalgia hit harder than he expected, and he quickly turned away, swallowing hard. The gathering was in full swing, families and friends mingling, sharing laughter and stories. But the warmth of community felt foreign to him here, burdened by secrets and regrets. He lost himself in arranging the flowers, each stem reminding him of the fragility of love and trust. Hey, Jim, you all right? Brad, a mutual friend, leaned against the table, concern etched on his face. You seem a little out of it. Just thinking, Jim replied, forcing another smile. He glanced back toward Sarah, who was now animatedly gesturing with her hands. Her laughter rang out, and for a moment he felt the weight of time slip away. About Sarah? Brad asked bluntly, nudging him gently. You two need to figure it out. It's been a long time. I know, Jim sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. But things aren't that simple. Nothing ever is, man. Life's messy, Brad replied, his expression softening. But sometimes it's worth digging through the mess to get to the good stuff. Jim pondered his words. Could he do that? Was there a good stuff left to find? Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a commotion drew his attention. From across the hall, Sarah stood with a little boy, her gentle laughter echoing. His heart twisted. He'd always wanted that, a family, laughter filling a home. But she had shattered that dream once. Jim! A voice yelled from the other side of the room, snapping him back. A group gathered, and they needed him again. He moved toward them, but his heart felt like it was being pulled in different directions. He had a choice to make: dare to open the door a crack or slam it shut for good. As the evening wore on, the energy began to shift. People paired off, conversations firing connection and laughter. But Jim remained adrift, wrestling with his feelings. This wasn't how he imagined his life. Resentment murmured in his chest, but so did an uncertain flicker of hope. Lost in thought, Jim turned once more toward Sarah. She caught his gaze and held it. For the briefest of moments, her joy faltered, melting into something deeper, a silent acknowledgement of what was at stake. The connection crackled in the air between them, so tangible it left him breathless. And in that instant, he realized he was standing at a crossroads. Could he genuinely forgive? Could a new kind of love happen again, amidst the ruins of the past? The night stretched before him, each moment unfolding like a question mark, as the weight of possibility hung in the balance. And just when he thought he might take a step forward, another voice brought him to a halt. "Jim, we really need you for the final arrangements." Caught between two worlds, Jim paused. What would he choose to do next? His heart raced as he took a deep breath, ready to decide. Would he dig deeper into this complicated mess, or retreat safely into the shadows of his pain? The answer felt like a chasm, and he stood right at the edge, peering into the unknown. The next step loomed large, and Jim knew it would change everything. Would he find the courage to leap into the uncertain light ahead, or would he allow fear to hold him back? The room buzzed with a hum of laughter and chatter, but to Jim, it all felt muted, like his own personal soundtrack was drowning under the weight of his indecision. He glanced around, the festive decorations and smiling faces creating a stark contrast to the turmoil that roiled within him. Every laugh he heard echoed with memories, and every cheerful greeting tugged at him like a child grasping for attention. "Jim, come on. We really need you." Brad's voice cut through the haze, urgency weaving through his words. With a deep breath, Jim pushed himself away from his inner thoughts, stepping toward the group fumbling with a tangled string of lights. But his gaze flitted back to Sarah, still across the room, her presence a beacon that pulled on his heart. She laughed again, the sound drifting through the cacophony. He could almost see fragments of their shared past in that laugh, moments filled with joy, dreams spun in the dark at night, hopes whispered when dawn painted their world anew. "Jim." Brad beckoned him again. "Focus up. We've got to get these done before the event starts." "You're right," Jim murmured, shaking off the shadow of nostalgia that clung to him and joining the task at hand. They fumbled with the lights, and as he joined the chorus of friendly banter, a part of him remained tethered to Sarah, even from across the crowded room. "I can't believe it's finally happening," Brad said, eyeing the decorations they were hanging. "Just think, another chance for all of us, right? A new beginning." The irony was almost too much to bear. New beginnings. Jim wondered if that was even in the cards for him and Sarah. When they finally finished, he stepped back and took a minute to just breathe. He found himself scanning the crowd again, his heart thumping loudly with the surge of raw emotions. She caught his eye once more, and for a moment, the chaos around them evaporated. Maybe this is the moment, he thought. Maybe this is my chance. Taking a step toward her wasn't just about addressing the unspoken distance, it was acknowledging the possibility of forgiveness. But as he moved, fear lingered in the corners of his mind, a whisper that cautioned him to turn back, to run away from the risk of getting hurt again. Just then, a small hand tugged at his shirt. He knelt down to find the little boy he had seen earlier, Sarah's son. "Are you going to help my mom?" he asked, eyes wide and innocent. The question landed heavily in Jim's chest. Help? Did he even know how to help anymore? It felt like a cruel irony, facing a child who embodied everything he had ever dreamed of, next to the mother who had shattered it all. "He's a good kid," the boy continued, unaware of the tumult rolling through Jim's mind. "He wants you to come." "Yeah? Your mom wants me to help?" Jim managed a smile, heart softening just a bit. "Uh-huh. She said you're really good at fixing stuff." The child's words sparked something inside him, a glimmer of hope amidst all the doubt. Could he really be a part of their life? He stood, looking over at Sarah. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the lives intertwined with his past mistakes. He could help them. Maybe that was where healing began. But would she let him? Just as he was about to move, the lights flickered into life, illuminating the room with a warm glow. Laughter erupted. The atmosphere transformed. But just like that, a shadow of uncertainty washed over him again. Before he could take a step closer, a voice rang out from behind them. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a sec?" It was someone from her past, someone he recognized as a distant thread in her story. The child looked up at Jim, confusion clear on his innocent face. As Sarah's attention shifted away from him to the approaching figure, the moment stretched, and Jim felt a heaviness settle in. He stood on the edge of a breakthrough only to be interrupted by shadows that still existed between them. Would he let this moment falter, burdened yet again by the weight of his fears? Or would he find the confidence to step past her past and choose his own path forward? The choice was his to make, but the clock was ticking, and the opportunity hung in the air, fragile as a whisper. As his heart raced, Jim felt the tide of change roll in. Would this new beginning be bittersweet, or could it lead to real healing? Jim's heart pounded as he watched Sarah turn away, the distance between them expanding with every passing moment. The presence of that familiar figure from her past loomed large, the shadows of old memories threatening to swallow him whole. With every second ticking down, he felt the urge to flee, to retreat back into his safe cocoon of doubt and fear. But then he glanced back at the little boy, his bright eyes full of hope. It was a look that stirred something deep within him, something he thought had long since faded. "Help?" The word echoed in his mind, as if it could provide direction in the chaos swirling around him. "Mom wants to talk to Josh," the boy said, glancing at the incoming figure, his innocent voice weighing heavy with an unfiltered wisdom. "But I want you to help her. You're the best handyman around." The child's faith in him ignited a spark. Jim felt a warmth spreading in his chest, gently pushing against the cold grip of anxiety. Could he really help Sarah? Would she want him to? As he wrestled with his thoughts, the noise of the party faded into the background. All he could focus on was the connection he felt with Sarah, the shared history that bound them like invisible threads. Yes, they had challenges. Yes, there was regret. But wasn't he their hope too? Brad was still nearby, mumbling about the party preparations and the lights. But Jim's head swiveled back to Sarah, drawn like a moth to a flame. The other figure, that shadow from the past, was closer now, laughing, speaking too loudly. Jim could see the strain on Sarah's face, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. At that moment, everything sharpened: the laughter, the music, the buzzing of conversations. And then clarity struck. Jim braced himself, pulling courage from a reservoir of stored memories. He took a step forward. "I'm going to do this. I'm ready." For the first time in a long time, the moment ahead felt like a breath of fresh air instead of a suffocating weight. He moved through the crowd, weaving between familiar faces. As he approached Sarah, his pulse quickened, uncertain yet invigorated. Just as he was about to reach her, the unfamiliar man wrapped an arm around Sarah's shoulder, pulling her away. "Hey there, can I steal you for a minute?" the man said, a grin spreading across his face. Jim paused, eyes narrowing slightly. The little boy tugged at his shirt again, perplexed. "Why is he talking to my mom?" "I don't know, buddy." "I don't know." The words barely escaped his lips. Time slowed as he surveyed the scene, the laughter and joy around him contrasting sharply with his rising fear. He wanted to brush past them, to step in and claim the moment. But would Sarah want that? Would she welcome him back into her life? Or would this be another door closed in his face? With uncertainty swirling inside him, Jim clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. "You can do this. Just breathe," he muttered under his breath. As Sarah laughed again at something the man said, Jim's heart couldn't take it any longer. Was his fear holding him back, or was it the realization that maybe it was time to find out if they could start again? It was now or never. So he took a deep breath, facing the reality that hung heavy in the air. One last look at the little boy, who seemed to believe in magic. One final step toward Sarah, who was caught in a moment that felt both familiar and foreign. Could he find the right words? Could this new chapter begin right here? "Hey, Sarah," he finally called out, his voice cutting through the chatter, desperate for connection. Her eyes widened slightly, surprise glimmering in them as she turned. Would this be the moment that transformed everything or the one that further unraveled them both? The air crackled with tension, and Jim braced himself for whatever lay ahead. The moment stretched painfully as Sarah turned to face Jim. Her surprise was quickly washed over by an uncertainty that mirrored his own. The laughter and chatter faded into a dull hum, making the space between them feel immense and loaded with possibilities. "Jim?" she said, the name escaping her lips like a ghost returning from the past. "Yeah, it's me." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the storm of emotions swirling inside him. The moment felt fragile, like a butterfly landing on a ledge, poised to take flight or take cover. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her brow furrowed. There was a flash of something in her eyes. Was it annoyance, or perhaps a flicker of hope? I saw you needed help," he managed, glancing briefly at the man still at her side. Jealousy surged in him, throwing off his steadiness. "I thought I should come and Jim, this is Alex," Sarah interjected, the name hanging in the air like a weight. "Yes, an old friend," she said, her voice faltering a little. "An old friend." The words stung, but before he could dwell on them, Alex laughed, shaking his head as he clapped Jim on the shoulder. "Great to meet you, man. We were just talking about how Sarah handles all this chaos. She makes it look easy." Jim clenched his jaw, forcing a smile that felt strained. I think she always has." He could feel the boy's gaze on him, searching for reassurance, grounding him in the moment. But what was he reassuring him about? "Are you all right?" the boy whispered, sensing the tension. Jim glanced down, nodding. "Yeah, I'm good, buddy. Just talking to your mom." "Talking or—" The boy trailed off, his wide eyes flitting back between them as if he could see the unraveling thread of a story that needed mending. Their exchange brought Jim back to the weight of the moment. "I just wanted to say I've missed you," he finally said, the words spilling out before he could think them through. His heart raced, leaving his thoughts in a shambles. "Miss me?" Sarah echoed, her expression shifting from surprise to something deeper. Her eyes searched his, capturing fragments of their shared history. "Jim, it's been a long time." "It has," he admitted, feeling vulnerable. "But in all this time, I never stopped wondering what?" The challenge lay between them, and it felt like the end of every silence they had ever shared. Wondering if things could be gone differently. If we could be figured it out back then. He took a breath, the words feeling heavy and important. If we could still figure it out. The ambient noise of the party fell away, creating a bubble around them. Sarah shifted nervously, glancing at Alex, who seemed to sense the shift. He gave a slight nod, backing away just enough to grant them space. "Jim, I don't know," Sarah said softly, her voice trembling. "This is so unexpected. Believe me, I didn't plan to just jump in like this." "But Mom," the boy's voice cut through, reminding them both of the innocence that stood tugging at Jim's shirt. "Can we talk about the tent now?" "Of course," she quickly responded, her tension easing as she turned to him, a hint of relief showing on her handsome face. Jim felt a pang at being sidelined so abruptly, but he stayed, rooted in place. He could see the struggle in Sarah's eyes. Let us talk later," she suggested, stepping back slightly. It was a half-hopeful, half-closed door, offering a chance while still leaving everything open-ended. As she regained her composure, Jim felt the distance between them stretch once again. He wanted to seize the day, to pull her back into the warmth they once shared. But he also felt the reality of the moment settling in. With a nod, he replied, "I'd do like that." His heart sank a little with that resignation. Yet in that moment, he also realized something crucial. This wasn't over. As the boy led Sarah back into the throng of partygoers, Jim's eyes lingered on her, a silent promise in his gaze. Would he fight for a chance, or let the moment slip away again? He had a choice now. The thrill of possibilities surged within him once more. So, he took a step back, a deliberate move, allowing space for whatever came next, but just then, a voice from behind caught him off guard. "So, are you really going to try again?" Jim turned to see Brad leaning casually against a nearby wall, an eyebrow raised. The urgency in his tone was clear, and a rush of curiosity flooded Jim's chest. That simple question ignited a spark, drawing back to the weight of his own conviction. Maybe, Jim replied, feeling the pulse of determination grow stronger within him. The journey was just beginning, and it might lead to broken hearts or brand new beginnings. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one truth was clear: he would find out. Jim watched as Sarah and Alex disappeared into the crowded garden, the warmth of the summer evening contrasting sharply with the cold knot of uncertainty in his stomach. Shadows danced under the string lights and laughter echoed, yet the laughter felt distant, on the other side of a thick glass barrier he couldn't shatter. "Come on, man," Brad nudged him, snapping him out of his reverie. "You can't just stand here brooding. You've got to talk to her." "Right." Jim exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "But talk about what? The past? The mistakes?" "Maybe start there, yeah," Brad replied, tilting his head. "But don't forget the present." "She's here, Jim. That means something." He looked over to where Sarah was crouched down next to the boy, her eyes sparkling with affection. In that moment, she looked just like he remembered, filled with hope, laughter, and an openness he had once cherished deeply. Now, though, there was a barrier he couldn't quite see, built out of years and choices that had led them down separate paths. "Are you really going to let Alex be the one to bridge that gap?" Brad challenged him, crossing his arms, his own protectiveness for his friend evident. "Alex is just a friend," Jim muttered, more to himself than to Brad. "Isn't? Could be, or it could be something more. But if you want to find out, you've got to make your move. Talk to her." A single bark of laughter drew Jim's attention. He caught sight of Sarah, the way her shoulders shook with joy as the boy bounced on his feet, animatedly talking about the tent they were going to set up together. It was a sight that tugged at the corners of his heart. He felt an overwhelming urge to pull her close, to remind her of all they shared. "What if she doesn't want to talk?" Jim said, glancing back at Brad, who was watching him closely. "Then you'll know. What's worse, living with regrets or knowing you tried?" Brad's words hit home. It felt like a challenge, an awakening. The thought of inaction gnawed at him. Regret was a heavy weight, a shadow always looming. Sliding past the clusters of people, he focused on the gentle laughter as Sarah and Alex continued to engage the boy. He felt a surge of courage, a determination building. "Okay," Jim said suddenly. "You're right. I'll talk to her." "Good," Brad replied, his lips curling into a supportive smile. "Just remember, be honest." "Yeah." Honest Jim took a deep breath and approached them, the ground coiling beneath him with every stepping closer. As they turned towards him, he saw the flicker of surprise on Sarah's face and felt the familiar tug of memories that reminded him of all the intimacy they once shared. She wore a look that betrayed her affection, mixed with curiosity about what he had to say. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual, but his heart thumped like a drum in his chest. "Can we talk? Now? In front of Alex?" she said, glancing at her friend, who remained involved in conversation with her son. "It's important," Jim pressed, heart racing, the seconds dragging as he watched Sarah weigh his words. "Okay," she finally said, standing slightly taller, a hint of apprehension bubbling beneath her calm surface. "Just a minute, Alex. Can you give us a second?" As Alex nodded and walked a few feet away, Jim's gut twisted. He could either spill everything, a turbulent storm of old feelings and new desires, or dance carefully, tiptoeing around the emotions. "Jim, is everything all right?" Sarah asked, her brows knitted, eyes searching his face. "It's not about everything being all right, Sarah. I need to talk about us," he said, gulping, unsure of how his words would land. The air thickened, moments stretching into something eternal as her expression shifted. Would she retreat, or would she step forward into a space that could be mended? Just as he was about to say more, Brad reappeared behind him, interrupting. "Did I hear my name?" The interruption felt like a jolt. Jim glanced at Brad, who just gave him a mischievous grin. But behind that grin, Jim also saw the subtle reminder this was his moment, not Brad's. "Can we catch up later?" Jim said, frustration creeping into his voice. I'm in the middle of something here. Brad raised his hands and stepped back, a teasing smile plastered on his face. Well, I didn't want to barge in. Just saying hi. As Brad drifted away again, Jim turned back to Sarah, who was watching him with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. The openness in her gaze stirred something inside him. A flicker of hope blossomed. Look, I know it's been a long time, but I can't pretend I haven't thought about you, he continued. There's so much I want to say. The moment hung heavy, charged with uncertainty. Would their next words open a door or slam it shut? Okay, she said softly, a single word carrying the weight of 100 unspoken possibilities. Jim leaned in closer, timing his breath with hers as the air crackled with what could be. But just then, a sudden commotion erupted behind them, pulling their attention away from each other. What the? Jim turned, the surprise evident on his face. They both jerked around to see the commotion erupting among the partygoers. A stranger was being helped out by security, their voices high, drawing the crowd's attention. What is happening? Sarah exclaimed, her eyes wide, worry wrinkling her brow. In that charged moment, the world outside their bubble burst forth, and with it, a new uncertainty painted the air between them. What would this distraction mean for their delicate conversation? As tension crackled, Jim felt the weight of destiny pressing down. He was desperate to know how this spiral of emotions would unfold, but now chaos threatened to engulf them. Could they seize this moment? Or would the whirlwind sweep them apart again, forcing them into another uncertain silence? Behind the noise, hope lingered, waiting. Jim turned back, his heart racing, as anxiety mixed with urgency flooded his veins. The chaotic scene unfolded like a blur, security ushering the shouting stranger toward the garden's gate. Murmurs rippled through the guests, their laughter fading, replaced by curious whispers. The light-hearted atmosphere began to fray, and time felt suspended, every second heavier than the last. Sarah's voice broke through, steeped in worry. Her hand grazed his arm, the contact igniting a warmth he almost forgot. Do you think we should? Yeah, we should see what's going on, he replied, but even he could hear the uncertainty in his own voice. This wasn't how he envisioned their conversation unfolding. Together, they stepped closer to the crowd. The rattled faces of family and friends created a landscape of unease. Jim felt the heat of Sarah beside him, a reminder of everything they had once cherished and lost. He needed to keep his focus, but the warmth of her presence battled against the cold grip of the situation. As they edged nearer, the stranger's shouts echoed, bursting forth like jarring notes in a song. I don't care what you say. You can't just throw me out. I know my rights. Sir, let us take it down a notch, one of the security guards urged. You can't cause a scene here, especially not in front of kids. Jim exchanged a glance with Sarah, whose eyes held a mix of concern and sympathy. She understood how emotions could spiral, couldn't she? Wasn't this tumultuous dysfunction echoing the disturbances in their own past? What if they need help? Sarah said quietly, her voice almost lost amidst the clamor. Let us just stay back for now, Jim suggested, though reluctance filled his throat. He turned to her, ready to finally address the turbulent thoughts swirling in his mind, but the confusion around them was suffocating. Let us just sit down for a minute, he breathed, gesturing toward a quiet bench tucked away under a blooming tree. He desperately craved solitude, a space for vulnerability, without the weight of chaos. As they settled, the noise faded into background chaos, and the silence between them expanded. She searched his face, and for a moment, Jim thought he saw the flicker of hope he felt mirrored back. Want to tell me what you were saying? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Right. His heartbeat thrummed as Jim took her hand, the warmth grounding him, reminding him of all their years. I care about you, Sarah. I've missed you. And I've thought about how we lost each other, how easy it was to just let time drift. Her eyes softened. I miss you too, Jim. But things there's so much that's broken, he cut in, anxiety bleeding through. But that doesn't mean we can't try to fix things, right? I don't want to leave it like this. He felt her pulse quicken, an echo of everything they had been. But just as the words sunk into the air, another shout erupted from the direction of the crowd. "You just don't get it. You threw away what we built." Sarah stiffened, her thoughts suddenly distant again. "This kind of chaos, it just brings everything back, doesn't it?" The specter of unresolved feelings cast shadows over her features. Jim rubbed the back of his neck, frustration creeping in. "We can't let this define us, Sarah. Don't let this chaotic moment overrule what we could have." "But what if it does?" she asked, a tremor threading through her voice. "What if we just end up letting the past drag us down like this?" In that instance, their tension seemed equally matched with the commotion raging beyond them. Chaos splattered memories everywhere, dragging up ghosts they had tried to bury. Could they stand firm against the noise, or would the scars of betrayal and time rewrite their story once again? As she searched his eyes, he felt the heaviness of uncertainty pull at them both. He wondered if they could be the exception, or if this moment, much like the one they had stood in before, was just another fork in a road filled with unanswered questions. Would they break apart once more, or was this the moment they could begin to reclaim what was lost? Behind them, the argument escalated, and Jim knew they stood on the verge of a decision that could change everything. But would their next step bring them closer together, or tear them apart for good? As the shouting escalated, Jim's heart raced. It felt like the world around them blurred. This chaotic scene was a reflection of the turmoil within him. The stranger was just a voice of chaos, amplified and angry, but Jim knew that his own battle lay yet unchecked. "Jim, we should really move," Sarah said quietly, her hand tightening around his. Her warmth sent a grounding rush through him, igniting memories of gentler times together, moments they shared without the burden of betrayal hanging like a storm cloud overhead. "No," he said, steeling himself. "We can't keep running away from the hard stuff." With determination, he faced her. "We owe it to ourselves to push through." They were teetering on the edge of something more than just a conversation. They were at the precipice of change. "Is that what you want?" she asked, her eyes wide with vulnerability, searching for his truth amid the chaos. "To stand here together while the past screams around us?" "Yes," he exclaimed, his voice steady, cutting through the noise of the argument behind them. "But we need to be honest. I've missed us. I want to find a way back to what we were, not just ghosts and shadows." Her eyes glistened, filled with possibility. The warmth of shared history flickered between them. "I want that too, Jim. But how do we do it when everything feels broken?" Her questions hung heavy, yet he felt the hope nestled beneath the weight. "What if we start with the truth?" he offered softly, reaching for her hand again, fingers intertwining. "We can't fix things without facing each other. All of it, what we lost and what we could build." The chaos continued to swirl around them, but here, in this moment together, everything felt still. Slowly, the noise faded, leaving them in an intimate cocoon where only their heartbeat remained. "Okay, let us be real," Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. "I was scared of losing you to the hurt, scared of what I had done." Her voice cracked, but the sincerity painted in her tone held Jim firm. "When you lost your dad, I felt like I lost you too. And I made a terrible choice. I thought I was alone." In that moment, the fragmented words began to stitch together real understanding. Jim felt a release, a weight lifting from his chest. "You weren't alone," he said, squeezing her hand tighter, feeling the shared warmth spark once more. "We could have talked, faced it together. Instead, we ran. Can we? Can we try again?" she asked softly, eyes pleading. The question sank deep, settling into the core of his being. He'd been afraid to hope, but here it was shining through like a star in the dark night sky. "Yes, if you're willing to fight for it." Tears brimmed in her eyes, but this time they sparkled with joy, not sorrow. "I promise to fight. Together." Suddenly, the commotion intensified, drawing their attention away again. Jim felt a pang of frustration. The outside world intruded on their fragile moment of clarity. But this time, rather than letting it break them apart, they turned to face the chaos as a united front. "Let us head back," Jim said, pressing forward. "We can't let distraction keep us from building something new." With renewed determination, they stepped towards the crowd, hand in hand. Amid the throngs of people, The air crackled with potential. As they approached, the stranger's voice rekindled, "You can't silence me. I have a right to be here." Jim held Sarah's hand tighter. "We have a right to be here too. This moment is ours to claim." Together, they stood resolute, facing the world that had conspired to tear them apart, together inhaling the scent of fresh beginnings. And as they plunged into this uncharted territory, they felt the certainty of walking not just the path of hope, but the journey of healing and rebuilding, a path illuminated by their combined courage. Later, as laughter returned to the garden and the chaos calmed into a distant echo, Jim knew they were inching closer to mending what once seemed irreparable. "Step by step," he whispered to Sarah, "we'll figure this out." Her response was a soft squeeze of her hand, an agreement, a promise. The evening unfolded with warmth as the stars twinkled above them, a perfect reminder of the magic that comes when two hearts refuse to give up, and under that vast sky, they stepped forward together into a future painted with dreams and new beginning. Undefined but full of hope. It was in this defining moment that Jim realized love isn't just found in perfect moments. It's about rising from the ashes together and building something more beautiful, piece by piece. Now is the time to act. You need to subscribe now to not miss these powerful stories. Leave a like now to help us spread this message of hope. Comment below your thoughts about Jim and Sarah's uplifting journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring transformation. This is the moment to show your support and be part of our incredible community.